first, we have Craig Moore, co-founder of Property Flute, covering the topic, the future of Strata meeting management and voting. Hello, Craig.
Thanks for the
Hello.
introduction, Ryan, and welcome to everybody. That was a great introduction for me because I'm going to be reminding all of our viewers today the challenges we've had in the last many years with technology and why it's so different today and what the opportunities are. I'm going to mention some things that we know from the past. They're obvious, but they're worth mentioning again because I, as a property manager, experience these things all the time with the users and attendees at meetings. So I'll start quickly with a bio about myself. And by doing so, everyone's thoughts about why our industry is so complicated, so complex, and why we need sophisticated solutions. I've been a senior strata manager for quite a while and a managing broker in Vancouver. As Ryan mentioned, I'm a co-founder of Property Flute as the subject matter expert. I'm familiar with the systems of several management companies, both as an employee and as a client at 3 strata complexes. I've managed and participated in all kinds of strata corporations, residential, commercial, mixed-use residential and commercial, with and without sections. And for those who aren't aware, strata corporations can be divided into separate legal entities. So they've got separate councils, separate budgets, separate trust accounts. It's like 3 or more strata corporations in one. So that provides its own complexity. It can have types. Now that doesn't necessarily affect voting or some of the more sophisticated issues of managing a strata, but it's another level of complexity that the technology needs to address. I've managed bare land strata corporations, strata resorts and hotels where there's a residential and commercial component. I've assisted with resorts where there's a fractional interest. So that's different than fractional voting that Ryan mentioned, but fractional interest where you can have 2, 3, or 4 separate legal owners of one strata lot. And of course, there are strata corporations with airspace parcels that just make the whole strata world more interesting. And I've been on a strata council for several years, not at the moment, but many years in the past. So I've seen it from all sides, and I'm fortunate to have been involved with many very good management companies, both in Vancouver and in the interior of BC. So Ryan, I'd like to have my presentation up. How do we do that?
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Here we go.
There we go. So that's the bio that I just ran through, and I'm going to move on to the next slide. I'll touch briefly on why we think this conference is important and impactful. Well, for the first time, it brings together organizations and researchers that are bringing new and innovative tools and knowledge to the BC strata industry. And of course, it's available to everyone across BC, no matter what their location is, which is what's making our industry very interesting these days because people aren't staying in their strata lots. They're moving around, they're living elsewhere, they're traveling to their resorts. They want to have the service and access to their strata wherever they are. Some of the companies presenting today have been around for a few years, and to a degree, it has been a struggle for them to gain adoption. But I'm happy to say that that day is here and the demand for these services is growing. It's evident because councils and general ownership want to be more informed and to feel as though they can have better, faster decision making. So again, as a property manager, I see this all the time, whether it's a client that I have or somebody who wants to become a client. They're demanding more from their managing agents. They want these services They're looking for them. They're doing their own research, and they're becoming more sophisticated. I've seen that sophistication level grow quite significantly over the years. And of course, more and more property management companies and self-managed strata corporations are looking to use online cloud-based tools for managing documents and day-to-day matters and for managing their meetings. What does the digital world bring us? Again, this is simple and obvious. We all know this, but it's worth reminding ourselves that strata council decisions by email are now commonplace, and the demands brought on by owner communication emails is insurmountable at times. The reality is, since COVID came along, more groups are realizing that digital tools can make their property management better and more effective. And management companies and other organizations are continuing to implement platforms that provide extended service to clients. Examples are issue trackers, notice distribution, online document storage, discussion forums, and access to third-party payment solutions. Challenges with the early technology. Well, I remember clearly some very distinct challenges while I was trying to get my councils to meet by teleconference or online. Many of them didn't think that it would be effective meeting that way. But once they took the opportunity to have a teleconference, they realized it was very productive. And now the same is coming on with general meetings. It has been a large challenge, but the tools we've got these days, communication tools, online voting tools, are making it much more acceptable. Early on, the video communication platforms were very basic. I'm thinking about Skype. When we tried to do council meetings by Skype, it seemed very awkward for a variety of reasons. But now we're all using much more sophisticated platforms such as Zoom and Teams and WebEx. So we've got these interesting new tools, but I feel as though we're still at an early stage of development. And there's a need to bring more sophisticated applications to strata corporations, and in particular with our application, Property Flute, which is a meeting management platform. Fortunately, internet and Wi-Fi speeds are much faster today, and devices that can be used have improved dramatically. Smartphones, tablets, intelligent cameras, and microphones offer new opportunities for digital meetings. This may seem obvious to many of you, but individual users are still learning how to use many of these tools and are having their very first experiences with them. So our story for Property Flute. Ryan and myself, we were working together. Ryan's been on a council that I was managing, two councils, because he lives in a section strata. So I was working with Ryan closely for a few years. And he had someone that he had met through work who was a developer. And ultimately, the three of us got together and developed Property Flute, the online meeting and voting platform. It did get spurred on by the COVID-19 pandemic because all of a sudden everybody didn't want to be together. But the challenge there was just a lack of tailored Canadian and BC-based solutions, things that just did not work particularly well for many strata corporations in particular. So factors that have changed how strata meetings are conducted. Simple answer is that holding online general meetings has been awkward, time-consuming, and laborious. Council members have learned to appreciate being able to meet remotely, and now many owners want the same thing. COVID-19 propelled the acceptance and demand for remote attendance at both council meetings and general meetings. Big challenges at general meetings, however, check-in, registration. It's a tall order for some people, council members, property managers, and voters. We have to provide the facility to allow for owners with multiple units and proxies representing multiple owners. That alone was a major driver of why we created Property Flute. Precise counting can be slow and cumbersome, especially for a large strata. We recently ran a meeting for a strata with well over 600 residential and commercial units, and the voting process went exceptionally well. It was easy and quick, and it meant the council didn't have to laboriously scrutinize the voting during and after the meeting. An advantage of electronic voting is that we've been able to make sure that if there are multiple owners attending for one strata lot, or perhaps a proxy that's attending representing a strata lot where the owner also shows up, our software makes sure that you don't ever get a double vote. It will only record one vote from one person per strata lot. That's not always easy to guarantee when you're in person. Even if you have ballots, it can be a little tricky for somebody counting to make sure they've got it right and that they're only counting one vote per strata lot. So what hasn't changed? Technology is changing things, but some things haven't changed. With regard to general meetings, the chair is still required to conduct the meeting. We have to make sure that all the things the chair has to do are provided for. So it's a process that we help strata councils follow. All the requirements of the Strata Property Act remain in place, and they must be followed. Although there have been some changes recently, we still have to follow all those rules. And at general meetings, everyone must be able to hear and communicate with all other meeting attendees. So that is a bit of a trick, and fortunately, technology is helping us get there. So the technology opportunities are that it's bringing people together who might not normally attend a meeting. I've seen attendance change dramatically simply because they can attend online. It gives voters confidence that vote counting is being done correctly and effortlessly. It makes sure that owners with multiple strata lots can easily vote separately for each unit. And it provides structure to the meeting that isn't always present with perhaps an inexperienced property manager or self-run strata. Or even experienced strata managers are challenged, making sure that the meeting runs properly, flows correctly, that things aren't missed. So I'm going to get into some features of Property Flute. And at the risk of repeating ourselves, I am going to mention a couple of things again, and it's because we put so much effort into accommodating these necessary features, making sure they work well, and giving people the confidence that it is what they need. So again, we've accommodated owners with multiple units and proxies representing multiple owners. The large meeting we did recently, there was one council member that had 80 proxies. That's a challenge at the best of times, but it went extremely well. And Property Flute will handle all of the owner proxy combinations. It streamlines the check-in and enabling process. So with respect to what the chair must do, certifying proxies, making sure owners are who they say they are. We assist with that process and make sure it's as smooth as possible. We're able to handle fractional voting for mainly commercial units. Residential stratas don't typically have any fractional voting, although I have seen it. Property Flute will have you identify the quorum level and track that. And if there is a time when you fall below quorum, people leave the meeting, it'll prompt you. When voting is done, you can proceed as an agenda has been entered into Property Flute, but it's not forcing you to do the votes. If for any reason you want to skip majority vote or 3/4 vote, etc., the software allows you to do that. It also allows you to redo a vote if necessary. So we've made it flexible and provided lots of opportunities to amend votes, to enter quick votes into the system for anything that comes up. We also allow for secret ballots. Now that was a big issue when we started Property Flute. And I'm going to skip down to a slide that shows secret ballot submissions. So we're not required to force people to do secret ballots, but we put a lot of effort into this originally. The feature is still there. If for any reason Strata Corporation wants to provide that for their owners, they still can. And it is, votes remain completely secret. Nobody knows how anyone voted. And even if there's a meeting manager utilizing the system, they can't uncover how somebody voted. They can only determine that they did vote. Property Flute will, of course, handle council elections. They can be very, very simple, or they can be a little complicated. If more people want on council than there are seats for. And with regard to all voting, it's instant recording of movers, seconders, and the voting votes that are cast as well. It's all done simultaneously and very effortless once that vote is enabled. Users can't vote until the vote is enabled, and once it's ended, of course, they can't go back and change their vote. And it will compile votes as fast as people can select yes, no, or abstain. For the person running the software that we call the meeting manager, they'll see the number of votes cast, and when a vote is complete, it displays the results with percentages. And there are auditable live results. They're recorded permanently and provided on request from the Strata Corporation. So all of that comes together to potentially significantly reduce meeting time and remove many of the headaches for Strata corporations and property managers. So I mentioned the meeting manager. We refer to the person running the platform as the meeting manager. That could be anyone. It could be the property manager, a council member, or a Property Flute certified third-party consultant. And the software allows you to have assistants. So maybe it's an assistant that's helping to check in voters. They may be there to provide effectively a scrutineer position, although that's to a large degree irrelevant because it's all taken care of through the technology. And the assistant can be enabled to see what is happening in real time. So just like a meeting manager. So if the Strata Corporation wants to get a warm, fuzzy feeling that maybe the third-party consultant or the property manager is not playing tricks at all, they can be in the software and watch behind the scenes just like the meeting manager would be. One thing that we have found through putting on meetings is help is required. And we've been involved in every Property Flute meeting. And that seems to be a trend that's not going to go away, even though the opportunity is there for a council member or anyone else to run the software. Until all of us are more familiar with technology, getting online, using our microphone, using the video, logging in, etc., it's likely that an assistant from from Property Flute is going to be required, and we're happy to provide that service. There are different service levels, and our website indicates pricing models for those, and that is at propertyflute.ca. Something that we haven't experienced in the past, or if it's been done, it's been awkward. That's hybrid meetings. Hybrid meeting is somewhat of a misnomer, but it is being used. It simply means you've got people sitting in a room and you've got people online. How are we doing that? Technology these days is making it much, much easier. And people can either have the meeting entirely online, or they can do it in person and use online voting tools. So they could use their phone to vote. Or the meeting manager who's in the room or even online can record the votes manually for those who aren't on their device. So there's the opportunities are essentially endless now. And that keeps everybody involved in their strata as much as possible. So I've got a few screens that I want to show you. This is really not intended to give you entire tour of Property Flute, but it is just to give you an idea of the look and feel. So when you're setting up a meeting, it's creating the community, defining the meeting, establishing the agenda, resolutions, voting thresholds, etc. So this is going to be typically done by a meeting manager. Importing of owners and voting entitlements is extremely easy. All you need is a comma separated value file, and it's particularly easy to do that if you have that good information to go in a spreadsheet. It's very, very simple. Anyone could learn how to do this quite easily. And you can modify it once it's in the platform. Once you got your meeting set up and your links for communicating, whether it's a Zoom link or otherwise, Property Flute will allow you to send out an email invitation to everybody, and it can allow you to send it to one person or multiple or everyone, and you can do it as many times as are required. People tend to lose their emails. They don't read them. They go to junk mail, whatever. So if you need to come back in here at any time, even during the meeting, and send somebody information, you can do it. Property Flute works on meeting phases, and the meeting manager has control over those. It's just a way to control the process and make sure that essentially that nothing is missed. The voter list interface shows the meeting manager whether people are online, whether they're enabled for online voting or manual voting. And this is the control center for all of the registration process and enabling people to vote. You'd work with the chair on this. The chair has to advise the meeting manager that somebody is allowed to join. And it can be as thorough or as simple as you need it to be. Voter check-in. If there's just one owner with their one Strata lot and they're going to vote online, they would appear here and you would enable them very quick. If there's somebody who has multiple units or multiple owners that they're representing as a proxy, that can all be set up in advance and they would be listed here and enabled. That person would be enabled to vote accordingly. So once voting occurs, and by the way, I'm skipping over a few steps here. As I said, this is just to give you an idea of what the software looks like. Once voter submissions occur, the meeting manager can see what's happening. They can tell who has voted and who hasn't voted, encouraging people to get their votes in and track the meeting. If it's not a secret ballot, it will tell them how they voted. And very simply put, it's transparent to the meeting manager when everyone has voted and when the vote can be ended. So often it's a meeting manager who's communicating with the chair to tell them, we've got all the votes. Shall we end the voting process? And all of this is tracked and saved in the background and presented as an audit trail later on. We discussed secret ballots before. Council election, it's often very, very straightforward. Don't need a lot of technology for that. But in case you have tricky situations, more people who want on council, or again, somebody who has got several units they're representing, and then perhaps there's a precise count requested for council votes, and there's a mixture of votes from the different proxies. Property Flute will handle that very, very well. And then finally, once you're all done, the meeting's ended, there's an audit trail, and that can be made available to the Strata Corporation, to the property manager, whoever needs it. And on that note, the data, we consider that the data from the meeting is owned by the Strata Corporation. It's not our data, it's yours. You have access to it. You retain it, and you tell us potentially when to delete it. As soon as the meeting's done, if you want us to get you the reports and delete the data, we can do that. So finally, we do have some improvements coming. We're going to further streamline the registration and login process. We're going to implement pre-authorized links for one-click access. That's going to help people who are having a tough time, perhaps people who are just not savvy with using computers. We still face that. I mean, for many of you, it's perhaps incredible to understand that there just are people who have just not used video and audio systems to join meetings. And then voting is another level of complexity for them. We're going to take that to the next level. That's our next phase of programming. And we know that it will make quite a difference. And we're going to potentially integrate with communication tools such as Zoom, or we may create our own. We'll see how that goes. There's pluses and minuses to utilizing one given tool, but that's in our future. And lastly, if you do want to see a full demonstration of the software, you can go to Vizoa's website and search under seminars and events. You'll find online voting platforms for Stratas. So that's my presentation, Ryan, and I am open to questions now.
Awesome.
I'm going to ask you, Ryan, to jump in as you see fit to answer questions as well.
Sure.
So let's
I'll
open
throw
it to
some
that.
up on the screen here.
Sure.
Let's.
So question one, can a Strata council make purchasing decisions? Oh, well, Let's try and get our questions related specifically to Property Flute here. Let's see. There are groups of owners meeting in one place. Some of our elderly owners don't have the capacity to do so on their own. Can that work for voting? Yeah, absolutely. And that's what the so-called hybrid meeting is about. Get the people in the room who aren't comfortable on the technology, and everybody else can be online. What you may require is some added technology so that everyone can hear each other. That really is the hard part now, making sure you've got that set up properly. They don't have to see each other, but they do have to hear each other. And there are new devices out there that have improved that situation dramatically. Does the meeting invitation replace the meeting notice? Absolutely not. So that's what hasn't changed as well. The notice is the notice. It can contain the information about Property Flute or Zoom or whatever tools you're using. But the email from Property Flute is just to provide links to the meeting. So there's a question about security. We took that to heart as we were doing this, and that's actually what led me to saying we're going to improve the registration process. We've created quite a foolproof system for logging in. Up till now, you needed a code. That is posing some problems for people. It's just a challenge. People who aren't used to doing that. So we're reviewing that process, and we're going to maintain the high level of security, but make it easier for people to get into Property Flute and utilize their communication software. We've tested the software. We haven't had a third party test it and provide a review per se. So feel free to offer that service to us, but we have tested it ourselves and feel that it's very, very secure. Question here, if we find users have difficulty just using Zoom, for example, watching the slides and seeing the presenter or other participants, how are you finding them having to manage both Zoom and yours too? Yep, that is a challenge. There's no question about it. So we're streamlining that process. And here's the interesting thing. You put 100 people into a meeting, it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of them have no problem at all. That's good news. Most people are just fine, even with demographic that is older. Most of them are fine. It's a small number that are having challenges, and they're going to continue having challenges. And it's not necessarily age related. It's just somebody who's not familiar with the system. So those things will persist. Yes, for Zoom, for Property Flute, for other tools. Fact is, though, more and more as the younger generation comes up, that's less and less of an issue. Yes, another question about security and privacy. We've taken great care with Property Flute to make sure information is secure. And the secret balloting process, although it's not as relevant anymore, we made it as secret as it could be. Really, it just is up to the users of that to make sure that the data is secret. But within Property Flute, it is definitely hidden. Yes, thank you to somebody for mentioning Vizoa's video. We did a demo for them and had it recorded on, and it's posted on their website. So for motioning and seconding, what will happen in the meeting typically is the chair or the meeting manager will say, we're going to open voting now, or they're going to open for the motion and second to get the discussion going, depends on who's running the meeting. So it's just a matter of a single click for the meeting manager, and then for the users, a window pops up and asks them to motion and second, and it happens instantly. Everybody seems to know quite easily that they can and want to do that. So motion and second is done virtually instantly. And then discussion usually happens on the resolution, and then voting is open. So nobody can vote until after discussion is done. The chair will say, please open voting. It's then open, all the votes are cast. Of course, there should be no more discussion at that time. And meeting manager will tell the chair, everybody's cast their vote, or maybe there's one or two stragglers, and the chair will direct the meeting manager to close voting at the appropriate time, and it's done. And it's tallied instantly, and percentages, the number of votes and percentages are presented in the software. So the meeting manager would simply say, so many for, so many against, and total votes. So interesting question. Do you foresee the platform expanding to do more than manage meetings, issue tracking, compliance submissions, etc.? We've talked about other opportunities. We really want to nail it down perfectly for running meetings. Getting registration right now is the big challenge. Our software works fine doing it, but we want to implement better processes for our clients and help them with that, because it is such a huge issue. But yes, we created the name Property Flute because we wanted to provide other services beyond voting. And we'll tackle, ultimately, we would like to tackle needs that aren't being met right now. I myself have been a programmer in the past, and I've implemented sophisticated accounting systems, and I've had ideas as a property manager about what I'd like to see. I think there's still lots of opportunity that isn't being addressed by anyone yet, certainly in the Strata world. So
all right,
keep
thanks
that.
a lot there, Craig. Looks like we've run into the next segment now for Tony.